Hey friends. Now, when you and I talk, we're usually talking about knitting, and specifically how I'm really bad at knitting, which, let's face it, I am. But I think I'm significantly better at designing video games, or at least I really hope the 5 billion people who've downloaded video games that I've made would agree with that. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you today because I think I figured out a way to use my game design abilities to really level up my knitting abilities, and I thought maybe it would be useful for you too. So particularly if you're a beginner or if you're just wondering what the hell I'm talking about, why don't you stick around and we'll figure it out together. So I'm drinking something a little bit different today, and emphasis on a little bit different. As we've discussed before, you're not really going to see tea or coffee on this channel. The 3 things that I drink are room temp sparkling water, unless it's like super hot out, then I might put ice in it. Hot chocolate, 1 in the evenings, usually between 8 and 9 p.m. And protein shakes, because I don't chew things early in the morning. This is a little bit later in the day. We've certainly had some technical difficulties, so I wanted to show you the new sparkling water I'm trying. It's called OMG, and it is magnesium sparkling water. Why? Because I am essentially malnourished. I'm low on magnesium. I wanted to try it. And this is really interesting because it has a flavor. If you put a gun to my head, I could not tell you what the flavor is. It is just, oh, that's a flavor. Yep. There's a flavor there. I guess if you want to get really technical about it, the flavor is probably magnesium. So about video games. I've been a game designer for about 20 years, and 15 of that has been making video games. It wasn't the career I expected to have, or definitely wasn't anything I went to school for, because there weren't really programs to go to school for video games when I got started. It turns out I have a real affinity for recognizing systems that guide human behavior while making sure everybody's having a lot of fun doing it. I've learned a lot of lessons via game design that have really influenced the way that I approach my knitting. And even if you're not a gamer, I want to share one that's absolutely changed my knitting life. And specifically, it's changed the way that I'm approaching knitting the Rib Lace Raglan. If you haven't seen the whole saga of me knitting the Rib Lace Raglan by James N. Watts, I should fill you in. A while back, I fell in love with the pattern for the Rib Lace Raglan by James N. Watts. This is as far as I've gotten in it so far, despite the fact I've been working on it for quite some time. There are some reasons for this. I had to frog it 4 times before I got this far. There's a lot of issues that I've been having with it. Recently, I had an issue with it that caused me to go to the local yarn store and ask them how I messed it up, because I couldn't tell, frankly. And it took the woman who helped me about 10 or 15 minutes to figure out what I did. And then she very politely, not unkindly, told me that maybe I may not yet be at a skill level where it makes sense for me to tackle a full lace project, or maybe not even lace at all. And I definitely wasn't offended by this, and I definitely had the same thoughts working on the Rib Lace Raglan. I just really want the garment. I went home and I thought a while about how I was going to approach this, because I know I really want to make it. I've already gotten some of what has been the hardest parts so far taken care of, and it feels like a waste to just frog the whole thing and use the yarn for something else. I want to make this Rib Lace Raglan. So how do I go about doing it? And that's when I remembered a concept from game design that I thought might be really useful to share with all of you, and that's tutorialization. So if you've ever sat down to play a new board game with friends, you know that the absolute worst part of a board game is learning how to play it. Specifically, that part where the person who brought the game is explaining to everybody how to play, and no matter how much you end up liking the board game, you are absolutely bored to tears during the explanation. None of the terms that are being used make any sense to you yet. It's all just sort of fuzzy and boring, and people hate it. Video games work the same way. You have to tell the player the rules of the game so they know how to play it. But if they had to listen to a whole podcast or scroll through a whole ebook of explanation before they ever got started, nobody would play video games. They would all just be bored and go outside, or God forbid, read a book. So video games, in my opinion, have really perfected the art of teaching people how to play by getting them to play. Here's an example. So I mentioned before that I briefly took up knitting back in 2017, and all I really did in my first attempt at knitting were a bunch of sort of skinny, sort of short garter stitch scarves that I didn't use a pattern for. I would just knit. That was it. So I didn't have a ton of experience when I came back to knitting last year. And the very first pattern that I picked out was this incredible triangle shawl that I can't pronounce, but I will put up on the board. It was a triangle shawl that used increases, decreases, slipped stitches, brioche tuck. I had a cast on I'd never heard of, and had some yarn overs, I think, too, as part of the brioche. I don't even know what a brioche tuck is, if I'm perfectly honest, because I never got that far in the pattern. I never did. But Mario saved me. Let me explain. The first level of Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System back in the 80s is still considered the gold standard for how you teach a player to play a game. Why? Because it teaches you every skill that you need to learn to play the entire game, to beat the whole game without using a single word of text. So the very first thing is you start off on the very far left of the screen, and which lets you know that you want to go right. If you ever try to go back left, it won't let you. Once you've moved the screen forward, whatever was behind you, you can no longer get to. There's a box with a question mark on it, which really intrigues you. You want to figure out what you're supposed to do with that box, but then also there's an enemy that is very slowly approaching you on the screen. So far, the only things you've figured out how to do, because they're really the only things you can do in the game, are run and jump. So quickly, you figure out that you can defeat enemies by jumping on them, and you can hit the question mark box by jumping up and hitting it with your head underneath. You learn how to kill enemies, and you learn that hitting question mark boxes gives you rewards. And the entire level proceeds like that. The next thing that happens is that there are two enemies that are stuck between two warp pipes, so they're not going to come at you. There's two, so it's a new kind of challenge, because before you only had one that was coming directly towards you with nothing in between. But here, you know that you're going to have to deal with these two enemies, but they're contained, so you get to decide when you jump down and figure out how you're going to jump on both of them. It really carefully and distinctly ramps up the difficulty as you go, and it makes sure that you're never learning more than one thing that's new at a time. So I never actually finished that shawl, but I did make an Isham Road by Amy Herzog, which is a knit flat, because I hadn't learned knitting in the round yet, very simple oversized sweater that used garter stitch and stockinette stitch, and the only new skills I really had to learn were increases, decreases, and seaming. And because it was in sport weight and it was kind of oversized, man, did I get really good at stockinette. So now I know that the Rib Lace Raglan is as outside my skill set as the triangle shawl that I wanted to make was outside my skill set when I first started. So I think what I need to do is create a Mario level for myself. I need to set up a series of projects that will teach me the skills that I need one at a time, so that I get excited about having made things already. And I get this momentum from all of these accomplishments, so that when I come back to the Rib Lace Raglan, I come back with a lot more energy, a lot more excitement, and a lot more skill than I have right now. So the way that you sort of create a tutorial, or the way that I'm talking about it now, create a level for myself where I know the skills that I want to have by the time I beat these levels. I have to ask myself some questions. What are the skills that I need to know when I tackle this project? What are the component parts of those skills? So sometimes a skill will have secret skills that you need to learn, and I've got to figure out what those are. And what are the lower stake projects that will give me the skills that I need before I tackle the big boss? And in this case, my Bowser is the Rib Lace Raglan. So I think the thing that I am weakest at right now, or at least one of the things I'm really weakest at, is doing anything that isn't simple stockinette. Specifically, anything that requires row repeats or textures. That's not where my gift lies right now. So I've put the Rib Lace Raglan aside, and right now I'm working on the Christian scarf by Agnes Kutas. For my very first textured scarf, I think it's going pretty well. So you may recognize this yarn. This is the yarn that I bought at Loop Yarn when I went there to find out if anybody there could help me figure out what the hell I did to my Rib Lace Raglan. And as you can see, it's almost like a plaid texture, really. And I think it's turning out really beautifully with this cashmere merino nylon blend yarn. And I think my niece Ashley is really going to like it. And this is about how much I've done in a week. So this is substantially less than I would normally do if I were doing a simple stockinette project, but it is a hell of a lot more than I ever got done on the Rib Lace Raglan per night. And I'm learning repeat. This is a 10-row repeat. The repeat is fairly simple, fairly easy to memorize, but I'm getting a lot of practice in doing different types of stitches, in creating a texture, and crucially for me, I think, reading the stitches. I'm getting to the point just now, I certainly wasn't ready anywhere down here, but I'm getting to the point where if I have to put this down mid-row, I can pick it up and figure out where I'm supposed to be, which is not something I was able to do when I first started. And because I've never done a texture before, I mean, I've certainly never done one successfully, I'm really excited to work on this every night. I'm really excited about the amount of progress I'm making. Every time I finish a chunk of 5, I feel really accomplished. Every time I finish a chunk of 10, I feel super accomplished. And I really think my niece is going to like this. So it's also sort of crossing off some of my Christmas knitting as well. So this is a really great place for me to start, and I'm really excited to get through it. So what is the next step in my level once I finish that scarf? I have sort of a choose your own adventure. So the next thing I want to knit is another Christmas present. And I'm not sure if that's going to be the Downton cowl for my sister Wendy, or if it's going to be the Something Shiny scarf by Ellie Donner. There's a lot more lace in the Something Shiny scarf, but it is a relatively small project. It's certainly significantly smaller than the Downton cowl. The Downton cowl is a larger project with less lace, but because that project is mostly stockinette, all of my mistakes will be significantly more visible. So I'm going to see which one feels more doable when I finish the scarf. I think the Something Shiny scarf will really help me with specifically the kinds of stitches that go into lace. And it's something that really will just let me go in first without a lot of investment. Whereas the Downton cowl will basically, cover making sure that you've got staggered eyelets. So not really about repeats on the short term, but repeats on the long term. And there was significantly less of it. So it will give me a stronger ability to feel like I'm progressing with stockinette. That said, it's a significantly larger project. So I'm not sure which of those I'm going to do next, but I want to tackle those two. And then seeing how I'm feeling, I'll try the boss fight. I'll go back to the Rib Lace Raglan. But if I'm not ready yet, I'll reassess my skills, see what skills really feel like they're standing between me and the Rib Lace Raglan, and then find more patterns that I think I would be excited to do, objects I would be happy to have or gift, nothing that I just wouldn't want to work on. I think that's a really important part of this process. And then do those instead. I don't know if anybody else approaches knitting this way, but this is sort of how I approach wanting to get any skill. One thing I've learned in game design is that you need to make sure that you're giving players enough dopamine when they're succeeding at learning new things. You want them to feel really good about it. And if they're just throwing themselves up against the same challenge over and over and over again without really feeling a reward, they're going to burn out and they're going to stop playing the game. And I think the same thing is really true of creative projects like knitting. So I need to make sure that all of the projects that I'm using as stepping stones towards the thing I really want to make are things that I'm just genuinely happy to make anyway. Objects that I'm going to be excited to have or that I'm going to be proud to gift people. Projects that I think I'm going to find really satisfying while I'm knitting them and feel like I'm really accomplishing something. So I would say if you apply this to your own knitting life, make sure that any of the steps that you put between yourself and your boss fight are things that you are actively excited about doing. I very much believe in learning one thing at a time and really gaining that mastery. I think that's one reason why I'm so comfortable saying that I'm bad at knitting, because I know I've got a plan for getting good. And I hope my plan is helpful to you too. So is there some sort of white whale project that's out there for you? You know, I know a lot of people just believe in watching tutorial after tutorial, or, okay, first I'm gonna learn cables and then I'm gonna learn lace, and it's all about the specific techniques. But I find having the carrot of a specific object or a milestone where I know if I knit this, I will prove to myself that I am better than I was before. That really is exciting and driving me towards designing my approach to having those abilities is part of the fun of knitting for me as a game designer. And I hope that, you know, if you find this technique useful, it can be part of your journey too. If you want to see how this technique works out for me, I really encourage you to subscribe. I'm still a relatively small channel. Every new subscription is something I notice. I love getting comments. Feel free to leave a like. Let me know, do you have a white whale project? What's your final boss? And what are the steps you're thinking you might take in order to get there? But I definitely think taking it step by step is the best way to go. You know, there's that old saying, what's the best way to eat a whole elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that's how I'm approaching my knitting skills too. So yeah, a little bit shorter, a little bit different. I hope you like this. If you found it useful, please let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.